Thank you everyone for joining us today. This is actually the second Prodsmart webinar that we did, and we did one a few months ago. We were relatively new into the product then, and since then I've got a little bit more experience under our belt. So we'll touch on a few of the topics we touched on before, but hopefully take this a little bit further this time and get you familiar with what Prodsmart is and what it can do. Our agenda today, do a quick introduction. We'll talk about what a MES system is, what some current challenges for MES in today's environment. We'll do a Prodsmart demo today, so we'll take our chances with a live demo, no recordings for that, and then we'll finish up with a wrap-up. So like Lori mentioned, my name's Pete Markovic, Senior Solutions Consultant, also now Project Manager, so a couple extra things thrown at me. Been with IMAGINiT about a little over 12 years now, but over 30 some years out in the industry doing multiple different things, working as an engineer, IT project manager, design manager, wearing lots of different hats. For the IMAGINiT team, I specialize primarily in anything data management, right? So PDM, PLM, Prodsmart's kind of in that realm as well, being it's a manufacturing tool, but it is also managing our data. So this is why I've taken this on here at IMAGINiT. So a couple things about IMAGINiT. We are a division of RAND Worldwide. There's basically 4 different groups underneath the RAND Worldwide umbrella. IMAGINiT is the Autodesk partner. We're a platinum partner with Autodesk, but we've also got some sister companies that you guys might have heard about or worked with in the past. Ascend, RAND 3D, and our RAND simulation. If you want to learn anything more about any of our other divisions, you can go to rand.com. One of the things that at IMAGINiT and RAND as well, what we provide is we have many solutions or many ways to solve your problems, right? We're not just in the manufacturing space, we're also in the architectural space. We have scanning services, we have simulation services, but really, you know, from cradle to grave type of process control and helping you develop and manage your processes throughout any of these industries. We have expertise in our organization. All right, so let's get into what we want to talk about today, and that's MES, or Manufacturing Execution Systems. So we'll start out with just, again, a little bit of the basics of, you know, what is MES, what should we be looking for in a MES system, and so forth. So one of the things about manufacturing execution systems is that they're constantly changing, right? And so we need to take a look at like what technologies have changed, how are things being implemented, what has been done in the past, maybe is not being done currently today, in terms of how this software is implemented into your organization. So quickly, definition of MES, it's really it's an application that monitors, tracks, documents your manufacturing processes as well as your goods, right? So job orders, materials, inventory, purchase orders can all be part of a MES system. And they come in all sorts of different sizes and flavors, in terms of how much functionality they provide. Some are very focused just on job tracking, just on routing inventory through your manufacturing floor and so forth. So when we start talking about manufacturing and engineering and design and stuff, we hear all these acronyms, right? PDM, PLM, MRP, ERP, and then now we're throwing another one at you if you aren't familiar with the MES software. So again, stands for Manufacturing Execution Systems, but where MES has typically been is inside of ERP or MRP. A lot of your tools that you might have today might have some flavors of MES, right? Again, it varies in what functionality it might provide. And then there's some standalone applications like Prodsmart, where it is just a focused manufacturing execution system software. Now, in the past, this is kind of where we're going, is some of these things have changed. So if you haven't looked at MES lately, or if you've got a MES system in place today and you're looking at maybe doing an upgrade, in the past, these systems or solutions took quite a long time to bring in. anywhere from 6 to 18 months, year and a half. As you guys know, ERP can be a very long project to get an ERP system involved into your system. And again, because MES is a lot of times part of your ERP solution, it would slow down the implementation of a MES system as well. And the longer it takes to implement it, the more configuration, the more things you need to do, tends to lead to more cost, right? So, a 5-to-1 type of services to licensing types of cost. And then last, again, the adoption, just to get it implemented, hardware, we got to acquire hardware, we got to acquire licensing, got to train our users. All of that leads into slower implementation times. So what you'll see from Prodsmart is we're eliminating a lot of that, or we're making it more efficient. So when we're talking about MES, we're really talking about managing your manufacturing processes, right? So what does a typical manufacturing workflow process look like? Well, we typically will start out with like a production or a work order, right? And then we go and determine, well, what materials do we need? What operations do we need to fulfill that production or work order? And that a lot of times, we're looking at like, well, how does this process start? What kicks that off? Is it a sales order, which it typically is? Could be marketing, could be, somebody looking out in the future saying, we have to have these products in stock, we have a sale coming up. How does this process start to tell us what we need to build down on our manufacturing floor? How does this information move throughout the manufacturing floor? Is it on, paper? Is it via emails? Is it Excel spreadsheets? All of these types of things are things that we see in being used in industry today. And then how is it tracked? How well are we doing with this information? Are we accomplishing what we want to accomplish? And are we doing it efficiently? How much scrap are we producing? How much rework are we producing? Okay. Oh, I thought there was one more there, sorry. And so we're talking about tracking production, right? So again, some common methods to that is paper travelers. We see that quite often. It may look like something you see here on the right side. Could be electronic, right? We've at least, it's not a hand-drawn document. We've gone into Word and created this form. But a lot of times these are filled out manually, right? So with paper travelers, sometimes we use spreadsheets, might use emails to transfer that information. Whiteboards, we see that quite often in companies. You have a big production board somewhere in the manufacturing floor that tells us what products are being worked on, when are the due dates, when are things being scheduled, and so forth. And then, we're looking at using templates, right? We want to make sure we're capturing the same information. A lot of times then we'll print them out and distribute them to the workers. And at the end of the day, this is a lot of times a manual process, manual data entry, okay? Then the big question is, what do we do with that data once we've created it? So these challenges that we have in managing these processes, how do they impact our bottom line? We go back and take a look at the production process that I just mentioned. A lot of times starts out as production or work order and goes through these operations until the end when we're entering the data. Well, what happens along the way? Well, maybe on that printed out piece of paper, right, it gets to the first operation and, oh, somebody didn't fill it out correctly. So we're scribbling that off and we're handwriting in what it should be, right? Maybe we're even using whiteout, got some of that correction tape. Haven't seen that for quite some time. But again, manual operation. Then by the time we get to operation 3, we're tracking this information. We're writing it down manually on our clipboard, putting it on a piece of paper. At some point, we're transferring this information, right? Maybe again, not electronically, just handing off that piece of paper. Our order's complete. We're going to give it back to the manufacturing engineering group or whoever's processing that. And then possibly it's sitting on someone's desk. They spilled coffee all over it. Now it may not even be readable. And then at the end, we end up with this big stack of papers. Okay. And then the big question is, what do we do with that? So here's what possibly it might look like in your organization. Again, people handwriting this stuff out, the coffee stain being on there, but it might be difficult to read. Everybody's handwriting is different. These things can easily get lost, end up in the trash, maybe not make their way back in. And what does this, end up at the end of the day, right? lots of delays, not real time. Okay, maybe this gets, you know, put back into the stack 2 weeks after the production order was even done. So we don't even have any visibility to what happened on that order, maybe for weeks, maybe never, right? So it's not real time. We can't see accurately what is going through our shop in real time. And again, for analytics, you know, we're all wanting to look at, you know, what are we doing? How well are we doing it so that we can improve things in the future? We don't really have that unless somebody turns around and manually enters this into some other document database of some sort. So some of the things we would be looking at throughout this process or asking, you know, these questions is like, well, okay, we get to this material stage. Do we even have the stock to do this order, right? How do we check that today? Well, we might need to go over to MRP, might need to go over to ERP, wherever that might be. Could be again in spreadsheets. Maybe it's somebody even walking out and looking in the equipment rack or the materials rack and saying, yep, we have some sheet steel, we can run this. So these are things to kind of look at, you know, how are we doing this in our environment today? How do we know that we have the materials to do this? Well, great, we have the materials, but do we have the bandwidth? Do we have enough machinery or workers? You know, what's our capacity at right now? Are we running overtime? Do we have maintenance coming up on some machine that we need to consider into our production planning? So all these things are important things to take a look at and analyze, right? And again, we can't really do that if we don't have a system that's tracking it in real time and collects all that data at the end of these processes, at the end of these production orders, for us to be able to go back and take a look at it and see how we were doing. Again, that's the key thing here, is to be able to analyze this and get the analytics out. So kind of as a big picture, how are these impacting your business, right? We know that they're impacting it. How are they impacting it? Well, inventory visibility is a key area that we might be looking at in our organization and saying, we don't have good visibility into that. You know, we're always running short. We might start a production order, get halfway through to find out we ran out of materials, right? And we got to stop everything we're doing. Might be causing us to redo machine setup. You know, we were running a product, we ran out of materials, now we got to switch over to a different job. And, you know, that's costing us time and money to reprogram the machine. Traceability. You know, if you're in an industry that's regulated, you know, traceability doesn't just stop with product design, right? It's through the entire manufacturing process. We need to know how things were built, what materials were used, and so forth. So if that's a requirement within your organization, you know, how are you doing that today? How are you tracking that for audits and so forth? Probably the biggest challenge, or, you know, what MES really strives around, is job tracking, okay? Again, a lot of these other things we can do, like inventory, purchase orders, quality, things like that, but it really is the job tracking is the core focus. Those of you guys that have worked with me in the past, or in PLM products, things like that, or PLM projects, I should say, I say that a lot. You know, a PLM tool at its core should be managing items, bills of materials, and change orders, right? That's kind of the core functions of a PLM tool. Well, the core functions of a MES tool is really the job tracking. So that is what you'd want to focus on as far as one of the key areas of that your system should be providing you. And then quality control. You know, it's another area where a lot of your MES tools today can help with. Prodsmart certainly can. And we'll talk about that when we get into the demo a little bit later and take a look at that. But some of these things, you know, any good MES system, you know, should be flexible so that we can bring these things in as we need. But again, the key focus here is on that job tracking, in my opinion. We got to make sure that we can do that. So what kind of impact do we get in our company when we have these out of control processes? Well, missing deadlines, right? We miss shipping something on time and our customers aren't happy about it, right? Maybe we have to pay penalties, things like that. Maybe we have to, you know, pay overnight shipping to get it there on time where we could have got before ground or something. Bottlenecks, right? So probably the thing is here is we don't know where they're at. So when we're not really managing our processes well, these bottlenecks are happening and we may not even have exposure to them or know about them until you start putting these processes into some sort of electronic form. Then you can start saying, oh, it's taking, you know, Sally way longer than we expected her to take to do this particular process or to do this particular job. Higher processing costs, right? All of that's going to lead to it. Our labor costs go up. If we're producing more scrap because of not building the right parts or whatever it might be, that all leads to higher processing costs. And of course, increased waste and scrap as well. And traceability, that's a big key piece that I think a lot of people kind of overlook. But again, it depends on what industry you might be in. And then inventory, raw material sourcing. Do we have what we need before we even start? We should know that and should have a very easy way to see that and find that out. So how do we take control of these things? Well, one of the ways of doing that is to digitize your production process. And how we can do that, we come with this little Charlie the clipboard. We take oops, I had another, sorry, I thought I had another animation here. But anyways, Charlie the clipboard and turn that into Tammy tablet, right? So going from paper-based, we transform into an electronic environment, a digitized environment that's real time. That's how we take control of these processes. And that digital transformation is just an example of that. So going away from that paper-based, hand-filled out document to something that's a little bit easier to read, has some, smart capabilities into it, barcoding, scanners, things like that, and being able to use technology and input devices like a tablet, like a computer, to bring that information into our system. So what should we be looking for in a system that can provide all of this? Well, I mentioned this a little bit before, the flexibility of a system, the modularity of a system, right? What we'll see is in Prodsmart, we have a lot of capabilities, sometimes you can get lost a little bit in the capabilities, but you don't need to put all of that in place day one, okay? You can start out with what's important to you. What are the things that you need to control right away? And that goes back to that implementation time. We said 6 to 18 months, we're looking at weeks, right? That you can be up and running with Prodsmart. In fact, even, a few days, you can have things configured and run your first job through it. And that's really the flexibility of the system, allowing us to do that and then bring in things as we need them downstream. Maybe we need to bring in inventory management. Maybe we need to bring in quality. Don't need to start out there. So next one here, real-time inventory. Production tracking, absolutely. The real-time inventory, yeah, it's something that's very important, but you might have that in another system already, right? And so now we're talking about probably tying into that system. So, but if you don't, Prodsmart's a place that can do that. The instant data capture, okay? So real time, that's key and critical in any of these solutions, is that we're not waiting days, weeks, and so forth to get that information and get that information back. Quality control, again, these are features that a good system should have, and Prodsmart does. So when we're working through an operation, okay, and we say we're done, machining this part, we can put in a little checklist, okay, that says, did you check this? Did you check that? Yes, no. We can capture, numbers of how much waste did you produce, things like that. Again, all feeds back into quality control and understanding what we're doing. So Prodsmart, you guys have probably heard us talk, if you've engaged with, us with Vault or PLM or any of these other data management tools, we always say, Vault is a single source of truth for your engineering data. Well, Prodsmart's a single source of truth for your manufacturing data, right? It's in one place that then becomes accessible to the whole business, and that's important, okay? People that need this, production direct managers, operations, purchasing, scheduling, and so forth. So that's a key thing. One place to know that we have up-to-date, real-time information going on. So some of those things that I said a MES system should have, well, it's kind of why we're here. Prodsmart does have them. It is modular, it is flexible, and it's mobile-based, which is nice. A lot of us are getting to that point where on our manufacturing floor, we don't have necessarily computers set up everywhere. Maybe we're using more tablets. You can even use phones, right? So Prodsmart runs on a PC, a tablet, iOS or Android, and then also phone, iOS and Android phones as well. Okay, plug and play. You know, it sounds great. I mean, there's some configuration that you need to do, but it's minimal and it's not customization. We're not writing code to just get your up and running. It's basically mostly ready to go out of the box. There are some things that you might want to go in. I mean, obviously you need to set up your machines, you need to set up what your operations are, you need to put in your workers, you know, that's with any system, right? But the connectivity between operations, machines, production orders, things like that's all ready to go. It's plug and play, right? So minimal configuration and you can be up and running. Integration into other software, okay? That's one of the things at IMAGINiT we can assist with. It does have an API, a documented REST API that allows us to connect Prodsmart to other applications, whether that be ERP, whether it might be a PLM tool or PDM tool. You know, if you want to bring your products in from another source, there is some built-in integrations. I'll talk about that when we get into the demonstration a little bit. But it can easily be integrated, and you know, obviously easily is a little bit it's easy to say easily, but you know, depending on what your system is and the complexity of that integration, it varies all over the place, right? Sometimes, you know, we look at, are we just transferring stuff over at one time? Do we have to keep things in sync? So, but the key thing is it has an API that is easily integrated into other software. Instant data capture. Already mentioned that a couple times. Real time, as we're producing these products, as we're doing operations, we're inputting that into the system that's available to everybody, right? And it's scalable. Okay, like I mentioned before, we can add on the people that are accessing Prodsmart as well as the functionality that Prodsmart's providing. Okay. So I did throw this slide in here real quick. There's a couple built-in integrations. You know, there's not a built-in integration to like SAP and Epicor and Infor, you know, some of the popular ERP tools we have. But there is some, you know, I had the customer just call me just last week about, can we integrate into QuickBooks? And yep, actually there is an integration directly in the software to QuickBooks. I've not personally used this or have gone through that process, but it is there. And there's a bunch of others. We just happen to show that one just for kind of demonstration purposes. But so there's some built-in stuff. There's built-in to Fusion 360. So that's the screen grab we see here. We can bring products over from Fusion 360. Quality reporting, things like that. Some of that's transferable back and forth between Fusion 360. And you know, because now it's part of the Autodesk ecosystem, and you know, we're going to see more and more integrations into other Autodesk products as this tool evolves. I didn't mention this earlier, but so this is still a relatively new product for Autodesk, right? They've had it for a couple years, and we've been part of the process for about the last 6 months or so is when Autodesk kind of opened this up to partners. But it's not a new tool, okay? Prodsmart started in 2012. So it's over a decade old already, so it's matured. It's not like, you know, this was just created a few years ago. It's just that it's new to Autodesk. Autodesk acquired it a couple years ago. And so as you guys know, as working with other Autodesk products, it takes a little bit of time for them to integrate it into their ecosystem, but we see that coming and it's happening all the time. This is a software as a service. So if you're not familiar with that term, what that means is it's all hosted by Autodesk. There's nothing you need to install on your site. Other than if you're on a tablet or a phone, then you need to install the mobile application. But if you're going to run it on a computer, it's just a web browser, right? So what that affords you, though, is that Autodesk is managing this application for you. There's going to be enhancements. There's going to be updates. There's going to be changes being made to this application on an ongoing basis. So it's not like you have to wait a year or half a year and do upgrades and things like that to get the new functionality. And so we see, you know, some of these built-in integrations just going to continue to evolve over time. And again, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but there is an open API for development and integrations based on REST API, and well documented that you can go check out. All right, so let's go to the fun part here, to the demo. So let me just exit out of here. All right, and you guys should be seeing my screen now. I have Prodsmart pulled up. I'm running Microsoft Edge. Any of the browsers will work, so you can use Chrome, you can use Firefox, you can use Safari. I'm not sure if there's other ones out there still anymore. Probably not Netscape compatible. That's got to date myself a little bit. But anyways, on the shop floor, we see that a lot of companies have PCs down there, so it'll run fine on that. Should even run like on a Chromebook, right? Anything that has internet connectivity and a browser. That's the key thing. So we log in to Prodsmart using an Autodesk ID, which some of you guys are probably familiar if you're using other Autodesk products. Gets you into your site. And the first place it takes you to is the dashboard, which makes sense, right? It's a good place to start. This is where the analytics, where some of that real-time information back to you starts. And you can make your own dashboards. Not really part of this tool, but we've had some customers that have gone down this path with using BI, Microsoft BI, and pulling data out, again, through that API, pulling the data out into their own BI dashboards if that's what you want. Or you can set this up as a dashboard. Like I said, we're on the dashboard page right here, and run this up on a monitor down on the manufacturing floor, right? So people can see in real time what's going on. Now, as we've been sitting here, this has been updating, but nothing's really going on in my factory, so nothing's really changing. But if jobs were being ran and started and stopped and things like that, we would see our feed up here updating, you know, basically, I don't know what the refresh rate is, about every 2 or 3 minutes it refreshes. But on our dashboard, you know, some of the areas we have a feed. So as people are starting orders, like Bellany started this production order in doing a cutting operation. Looks like she just got done producing some cutting on a bike frame assembly and so forth. So we have a feed here of, you know, all the most recent operations or jobs that have been ran. We can see what our productivity is here. Now everybody likes that, right? 677%. Understand, you know, my tenant that I'm running, you know, I don't have a manufacturing floor. I don't have people logging in and running jobs. So I have to kind of go in and simulate that. And so a job that might take 10 minutes, you know, I start and stop it in 30 seconds. Well, my productivity is going to reflect that, right? And it's going to look like I'm working really, really hard. So again, this is a little bit skewed, but availability, you know, what's our availability sitting at right now? We've got a lot of availability, right? We're at 100% available to run shop orders through our factory. What's our quality rating, right? Well, we're at 97%, so it tells me we got a little bit going on, and I can see very quickly down here, we've got some waste happening, right? We've produced, you know, six items that either scrapped or going to be reworked or something along the lines. We can see our ongoing jobs. We can see how many finished products we've done. Who's working? Well, I've got 3 workers working in my factory right now, and 1 machine running, right? Nobody stopped, that's good. But what if a machine was down? Maybe it's down for maintenance. Maybe it's down for unscheduled maintenance, right? We would want to know that, and we can see that really quickly. Going down the side here, the next tab is the analytics. And again, this is going to look a lot different as you've accumulated data. You know, I don't have a lot of data in my environment, but nonetheless, you can see what's available to you. We have different charts for different things, you know, whether I'm looking at, you know, the quantities of products by operation that we've been producing, operating comparison, you know, like the cutting versus the drilling versus the grinding by a particular product. So we pulled up the tube frame assembly, for example, and even worker comparison. You know, it's always kind of a touchy subject to start talking about workers, right? Because we don't want to really, you know, go down that road, but it's an important thing to know is like, well, do we have one worker that seems to produce a lot more scrap than someone else running the same jobs? You know, we can see that here. And it might not mean that, you know, we need to go get rid of that worker. It means that we just need to go work with that worker, right? We need to find out what's going on. Is it a training thing? Is it, you know, they're just not comfortable with the machinery? You know, whatever it might be, you know, but if you don't know the problem exists, you cannot go and address it. So this will help pull some of that information out. We can look at how much waste, you know, let's see, some of this is not going to pull up real easily for me. because again, I don't have a lot of data in there. But if my workers are producing waste, what's their productivity look like? And again, my productivity here, nobody's really working right now, isn't really good. But you guys get the idea of it being in here. So we have a lot of different fields that we can pull things up on, by workers, by machines, by products, operations, and so forth. And we can add on additional tabs, create new graphs. Very configurable. Again, doesn't take any coding to go and building out the reports or the analytics part of it. Speaking of reports, we do have built-in reports. Okay, so again, getting all this information in is one thing. Getting it back out is even better, right? Now we can start looking at things. So we got reports based off of different features within Prodsmart, whether we're looking at jobs, downtime, cost, our production orders. We can put in a timeline, maybe different product families or whatever. In this case, I'm just going to say, you know what, go ahead and I want the worker machine downtime. Maybe I want detailed waste on there or whatever. But for my production orders, I'll just start with that, see what I get. And real quickly, I can see what's ran through in the last 2 weeks. Okay. And how many I've created, how many I've had to scrap. So here I've created 10, I had 5 scraps, or I've had 5 that fell into the waste bucket. 1 created, 1 waste, right? From here, I can get it out into Excel, right? So we all love Excel. It's our Swiss Army knife that we use for everything. Prodsmart has that ability to take this information out and then you can slice and dice it, put it into any kind of charts, graphs, things like that you'd want, as well as exporting it out to PDF. So all of that is built in. Nothing you need to do to get to that functionality. All right. So that's kind of our main 3 areas, that we look at for getting information out. Well, how do we get this information in? I mean, that's just as critical, right? It's not going to just appear on it magically. And that's where all this stuff down the left-hand side comes into play. And like I said, you don't need to implement everything. If you don't want to start out doing inventory tracking, you don't need to. If you don't want to start out doing purchase orders, you don't need to. Sales orders, but it's all there. So again, the scalability of this is just phenomenal, right? We can take this as far as we want to take it, and it's no additional cost. These aren't features that you have to, click on and oh, it's going to take more tokens or credits or things like that, or it's just all there from day one. It's just up to you how much you want to implement. But there are some things that we need to get in at least as a minimal, right? Because again, more than likely you're going to do job tracking, right? Our job's going through. So we need to start out with, and again, you can start one or the other. It's not necessarily right or wrong, but we might start with building out our products first. Okay, we could start there. We could start with operations because that's kind of important, because when we build out a product, we're going to define what those operations are going to be. So let's start with operations. That's not a bad place to start. So one of the things is in each of these locations or each of these screens within Prodsmart, we have this thing called table filters, which allows us to really get down into not having, cleaning up our screen, for example. Like here, well, what do I got? 53. It's not too bad, but if I was a really large company and I had thousands of machines and thousands of operations, obviously this thing's going to get very big. So product families is something that we use quite a bit in Prodsmart, right? To group things together. And in this case, I have raw material and I have finished goods. So if I want to look at the operations, for example, that are associated to finished goods, I can simply filter that out, and now I'm down to 21. And this exists on all of the different workspaces. I'm pretty sure all of the workspaces, but all the important workspaces at least is these table filters that just help you work within there. So very intuitive tool, doesn't require a whole ton of training. Most customers can get in here and navigate it pretty well, pretty easily. So I come in here and I take a look at it, and again, if I'm creating a new operation, I can simply just say add operation. Maybe I want to edit an operation, so I have this assembly here. It's an assembly operation. It's for this product, this bike frame. Let me just go into the edit mode of this, and you'll see kind of what we can do within an operation. We give it a code. Those can be set up to like auto-generate, or you can just come up with your own code type of nomenclature that you want. Associated to a product, what products does this operation apply to? We can put in lead times. Some of this is, the nice thing is not all of this is required. So it's not going to take us a lot of time to just get some data stood up. You know, all of this is actually pretty optional. Where you see the little blue circle there, those are the required fields. And you take a look at here, there's only like 3 things, right? A code, a product, and number of times per product that we do this operation. Everything else is optional, but there are things that we would want, right? Maybe this operation is tied to certain machines. I can set that up. Okay, so it's tied to this cutting machine or that cutting machine. Now it's an assembly operation, so probably not tied to a machine. Do I have a checklist that I should put to this operation? So when we perform this, maybe we want that quality checklist to pop up, right? And then, you know, I can go over to that quality checklist. I can add to it, or, you know, obviously you define this ahead of time, but we can tie which checklist we want to an operation. This is an important one, the waste, because again, we talk about that a lot in our manufacturing processes. What are we doing about rework and scrap and things like that? So I can associate the different kinds of waste that may happen in this operation. Now, maybe this isn't real, you know, true that I'd have a fold injury. Well, maybe a fold injury, but incorrect dimensions or warped edges, you know, it's possible, I guess, while I'm assembling something. But what types of waste do I want to capture? And again, this will be defined down here in the quality section. So you can just go create new ones anytime you want to do. Some of the other things that you can capture in here is, I guess this one's disabled for this, but you know, recovery, is this an operation that you can do rework on, things like that, and so forth. So I'm not going to go through all of those. We can take a look at our operations. So we just have, you know, how long this operation should take. Again, it's an assembly operation, so we're not really involving any machine or anything like that. We can put some notes on it, and most importantly, we can put files on this. So if we have a work instruction that we want to associate to this operation, so that when, you know, Nancy's going to do this, she'll have that information right there at her workstation. So you could put a drawing here, a PDF of a drawing or a Word document, whatever you want to do. You can associate that to that. Okay. So once we have our operations, then we can probably go over to our products. And again, there's times I create the product first, create the operation second, jump back and forth. Doesn't really matter too much the order that you do this in. Here again, we have the table filters, you know, whatever applies, right? So product family is probably one of those that we use quite a bit. That's why I bring that up. We can export this information out at any point. There's built-in reportings on some of this stuff. But let's just go in and say we want to add a product, right? So not too much we have to put in here. Let's say that we're creating a new bracket, I guess, right? And this is going to be a bike bracket. All right, we do have some advanced fields that you can come in. Again, optional if you want, like what's the minimum quantity when we run this product that we have to run? How many is the max that we can maintain in inventory? Maybe we don't want to ever have more than 100 on hand. Then if an order comes up and we've already have 100 on hand, it'll let us know what some of those things are at. But again, these are all optional. But what we can do here is we can actually now associate our operations or processes of operations to this product, okay, off of a template. So if we have a very standard set of operations that we do, we can put that into a template-like form, and then here's where we can add that in. Now, in this case, maybe this is going to be a, you know, a cut, weld, and assemble, right? So I'm going to grab that set of operations that are, again, we already defined down here in the operations, and I'm going to save that to this product. Okay. Now, we could have also manually set up the operations for this product versus using a template. But once we have the product, we can now come in here and we can associate materials. So maybe there's a material that we need to use on this product. I don't know, I'm just going to grab something, not pay too much attention to what I'm grabbing, but let's just say I need that, right? How much of that do I need? Now the unit of measures, we can define that over in our raw materials area. So like maybe this should be in feet, but maybe in this case it's in inches, and we need 2 of these, right? And then for which part of the operation are we consuming that material? So in this case, it's the cutting operation. So we can even get down to that level of where are we consuming these materials for what, okay? One thing I forgot to mention, you know, when you're setting up Prodsmart, some of the things you need to think about is to what level do I want to take this down to in terms of like operations, okay? Is an operation moving some material into a work cell? And that's, and then the material, you know, something happens magically in that work cell, right? You know, we machine it, maybe we, you know, maybe we paint it, whatever. We might do a bunch of different things in that work cell, and then it comes out, okay? And maybe that's all we care about, when it goes in and when it comes out, and we can do that. How far down you take it, that's totally up to you. You know, if you want to track that, well, it came into this work location, and the first operation was we did a cutting operation, all right? Then we did a deburring operation. Then we did a, we took it to the break and we bent the part. You know, if you want to take it down to that level, that's what's important to you, you can. Or you can keep it at a higher level, just depending on what you want to do. And you know, it's one of the areas that you kind of got to think out, because what you don't want to do is, you know, have somebody having to input, okay, I just worked on these 10 pieces and it took me 3 minutes, and now I got to go back to my tablet and say I'm done with these 3 pieces. And then the next operation takes 5, right? We don't want to make it so cumbersome to the operators and the users that all they do is spend their time inputting information. So there's kind of that fine balance that you got to think about a little bit when you're setting this up. But the nice thing is, let's say you go down this path of, well, here's where we're going to take it. And then after 2 or 3 weeks, you realize, yeah, we need to go deeper or we need to back off. Well, that's something pretty easy to do. It's pretty easy to adjust for that. So just want to bring that up because that's, you know, in our discussions, that's what a lot of times, you know, one of the areas that customers really have to think that out. Like how deep do we want to take this product into tracking every little event or keep it at a high level? But as you can see, we have like the ability down to different operations and what those operations are and consuming materials at each of those operations. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and save that product. Oh, I did want to go back in one more time. There it is right there. And a couple other things. So materials, again, we can put some information on this product, notes, files. So not only just on the operation, but on the products themselves, we can attach drawings, things like that. Spec sheets. You know, here's our unit of measure for this particular product. So when this rolls into bills of materials and things like that, how do we want this to be? And this came up not too long ago on a call with the customers, like, well, you know, we might want to track it as each, right? But when we purchase it, maybe we want something different, you know. It can be done. Now, this is grayed out because we need to go and set that up in a different screen, but there's actually an ability to do even conversions. So we might buy it in feet, but we consume it in inches, or we consume it in maybe even meters, you know. It could be something completely different. And that's part of what this conversion group has done here. And I don't have a lot of that configured in mind. Maybe a supplier is involved, you know, with a particular product. That information can be tracked here as well. So lots of information, but not necessarily required. We don't want to hamper people down to, you know, having to do all of this setup, all of this work to just trying this out, right? Just to, hey, is this a good fit for us? And we'll get to that here in a little bit when we get to next steps. All right, now products, we have operations. We really can't do anything until we have workers. So we would need to go in and build this out. Again, pretty simple to do. We can just assign them numbers. We can actually print out barcodes for our workers that they're able to scan, and that's how they can be recognized in the system. So again, some really cool kind of things there. Once we got all that ready to go, we can get into the jobs, right? We can start scheduling jobs now. And as soon as I go into the jobs, we can see what jobs very quickly we have running. I have a lot of red, a lot of delayed jobs. I'm not doing a very good job running my factory, but you know, I can go in and I got lots of different tools in here. I can close out jobs. I can report on them. You know, lots of tools right here staying in the system. So again, there's a lot of intuitiveness of using Prodsmart. We don't have to jump around from screen to screen. If I want to go and create a new job, again, minimal amount of information that I need to put in. I put in a code, Again, this is auto-generated in my case. When am I starting that job? When is that job due? Okay. Here's where I can pick a product, or look at this. I can import a product from Fusion 360. So if I'm using that as my modeling tool, my CAD tool, I can bring those over, and bills of materials, things like that as well. How many am I running on this job? Okay. I can add multiple products. So this job might be multiple products. It doesn't have to be one product per job type of thing. Who are my workers that can work on it? In this case, I just put all, right? But if you want to limit these types of products that only a certain group of people can run them, maybe because they're certified on certain equipment, you can do that. And then I can set these jobs up, but not mark them yet as being active. Once I make them active, then they become available for the operators and users to go pick up those jobs and do work. Now, what does that look like? Well, it's kind of cool. Is you have this built in right into Prodsmart. I click on the tablet view, and this is basically the operator's view now. And I can change this, again, configurable as to what operations are, certain people see. So maybe my production workers, I don't want them to, request maintenance. Maybe that's not a good idea, or request materials. So you can, again, configure this. But most of the times, they're just going to come in here. They're going to say insert production. They're going to type in their employee ID, or again, they could scan it in with a barcode scanner. And in this case, she was already in a job. So I'm in here as Bellany. She was in this assembly cut operation, and it's asking how many did she create, right? How many parts did you create? Simply say 25. Yep, please confirm. Here's where some of that waste comes in. And we associated this waste to this operation, and I can say, well, I made 25, but 5 of them were rusty. Okay, so I had some waste, and I can then confirm that and go ahead and submit that. And again, now that's real time. It's going to be back up in the dashboard. If I go back and look at the dashboard, it'll refresh in a couple minutes, and you'll see probably my quality come down a little bit, right? Because now I've got some more additional waste. What also is kind of nice here is there's a worker screen, kind of shows the workers where they're at, shows that she's available because she's not currently in a job. When did she punch in? All of that is all configurable. Like you can set up your workers that they work certain shifts, certain hours, and so forth. All right, and I'm just keeping an eye on the clock because I know we're getting a little closer. I want to give a few minutes here for Q&A. But as you can see, I mean, there's so much to talk about. There's so many things to look at inside of Prodsmart. This was just kind of really scratching the surface. But last time we did the webinar, we didn't get into the product itself, but I wanted to kind of give you a little overview and demo of that. But again, just to kind of keep us on track for time, I am going to jump out and go back into our PowerPoint and talk about, well, what if we liked what we saw? What if we're interested in going down the path of looking at Prodsmart? What are my next steps? Well, what an implementation can look like, and again, this varies from customer to customer, but it's potentially possible, is, within 5 days, you could be running some products through your shop floor. Now, it doesn't mean you get rid of whatever you're doing today. I would recommend running them simultaneously, right? So as you're working and testing out this software, keep doing what you're doing. But the way it typically looks is on day one, you spend like an hour on the phone and on a call, and we take a look at your current processes. What are you currently doing? And then we go and take that information and we digest it, come back day two, and 30 minutes might be a little ambiguous, but maybe an hour. Again, I like to set these up as hours, but we would actually start setting your Prodsmart up, right? Looking at what you provided us on day one, what we discussed on day one, and start configuring it on day two. Day three, we would review what we did on day two and look, is there anything we need to tweak, anything we need to adjust? And are we ready to run that first production run, right? Are we got the workers, we got some operations. Again, we're not going to have everything built out. We're just going to get enough built out to test this out, right? And so it is potentially within a few days, we could be using the system. And then on day 4, we come back again and we review this, what happened, how did things go, and so forth. So first week, you have a pretty good idea of how Prodsmart is going to fit into your business and how it's going to, make your processes more efficient and better. Now, we do have, or Autodesk has, a 14-day trial. So again, week one is kind of what I showed you. Week 2 is going to just be kind of a continuation of week 1 to continue to work through some of your products and job orders. But while you're doing this whole thing, you've got Autodesk and IMAGINiT, both of us, you know, as your right-hand man, as your co-pilot, right? We're right there with you guys, working through this. And then after a couple weeks, now you get to decide, okay, this did work out, we really like it, we want to continue to move forward. And basically, you know, your tenant becomes activated and it's yours, you know, so we don't lose anything that we did, right? So there is a 14-day trial. Lori will put the link in the chat, I think, of the webinar here that you guys can click on or copy it or whatever, so you don't have to write it down. But if you just Google it too, you'll find it there. But simply sign up and for your 14-day trial tenant. So again, we've got your back at IMAGINiT. We're definitely here to help you through that period. One of the things I didn't show, and I apologize for that in the demo, is that inside of Prodsmart, there's a real-time chat, right? You see that on a lot of other applications. There's, you know, websites you go to where, you know, if you're working in the tool and you're like, oh, I don't remember how to do this, you can click on that and it goes straight to Autodesk, rings up the bat phone at Autodesk. And generally there's someone going to answer it right away, but if not, puts you into a queue or they will get back to you. And I've seen, you know, the response is usually within an hour. Autodesk will get back and be able to answer your question or find out what you need. But we're here as well. And what we bring to the table, I want to, you know, be very, you know, bring that up is if you're looking to do any kinds of integrations, right? That's what IMAGINiT's going to be here for. We'll be your partner to make sure that, you know, your processes are efficient, streamlined. You know, we'll do the consulting side of this, as well as, you know, maybe we need to connect us up to another system. And that's something that we have expertise in and would be excited to work with you on. All right. So I think I left a few minutes, Lori. I kind of had to cut that off short, but appreciate your guys' time today, as always. And you know, if you don't get your Q&A in today, you can always reach out to us or reach out to your salesperson at IMAGINiT, and they can get you in touch with us.